This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
You know, Real Talkers, one of the things that I think that this show does best, and it's a testament to you, the audience, is that we kind of touch on an issue. We gather together oftentimes as a community and try to sort things out, process things. In this case, this week, it's been the senseless and horrific violent death, the murder of an Edmonton security guard, a relatively new Canadian, a 20-year-old by the name of Harshandeep Singh, a young man who dreamt of a career in policing, who loved aviation, who wanted to improve the world around him. Just 3 days on a new job as a security guard patrolling a central Edmonton apartment complex, Mr. Singh reportedly intervened in an altercation outside the building and ultimately paid for it with his life. 2 individuals have been arrested by police and are facing first-degree murder charges, but everybody's asking, who's protecting the security guards? We're going to do what we do here and what you do with us and talk this out. We're going to pick the brains of a couple of experts, longtime security industry officials, business owners who have a lot of experience here. We're going to take a look at government policy. We're going to take a look at training and ultimately see if it's possible in our home province of Alberta and across the country to prevent these types of tragedies, which are all too common, from continuing to happen on the job. In the back half of this show, we're going to connect with the mayor of Grande, Prairie. She's a good friend of this show. Her worship, Jackie Clayton, took in our episode yesterday, John, with Max Fawcett about Wonder Valley, you know, that proposed $70 billion tech park, the data center.
I'm guessing we're going to get the other side of the coin today.
Well, who knows? I mean, Mayor Clayton, she's probably not going to come on and absolutely poo-poo the project like Max Fawcett did yesterday. A highly entertaining interview, by the way. Max doesn't think that project's ever going to get built. Of course, the mayor would love to see $70 billion invested in the region.
Well, I think everyone would. We weren't dissing the fact that a data center that could lead the world in technology could be in Alberta. We're just dissing the AI video that didn't show us anything real or substantial.
Well, and maybe not even dissing, but just healthy cynicism, right? So we'll see. I said yesterday to a buddy off camera who was commenting to me on the interview, I said, I'm never going to cheer against Alberta, but I also don't want to get my hopes up around something that's completely unrealistic. So we'll get Mayor Clayton's take to see on what she thinks that could mean for the region. She'll join us in the back half of the episode. We'll get everything started in 30 seconds right after I remind you that Real Talk simply doesn't happen without the support of incredible partners like Business Career College. They've been in the business of financial training since 1997, and they've got a new designation out just this year for senior financial planners, for financial advisors, in particular, those that are consulting with and advising the next gen. You know, the next gen of investors, 3/4 of them say that they're intrigued by, interested in decentralized finance, crypto assets, Bitcoin, the blockchain, NFTs, and the like. If you're a financial advisor, you want to make sure, number one, you know what you're talking about, and number two, you're giving them good advice. You can learn more about this designation, the Certified Digital Asset Advisor, by visiting businesscareercollege.com. And when you register to achieve that destination, the CDAA designation, make sure you use that promo code Ryan20. It's going to knock 20% off that investment. Ryan20, all one word, when you get started, and register today at businesscareercollege.com. It's a story that they're talking about across the country. Obviously, federal political leaders, provincial, municipal political leaders, all sharing their condolences with the family of 20-year-old Harshandeep Singh, who was murdered in Edmonton the evening of Friday, December 6th. The Conservatives want to pin this on the Liberals and the NDP. The statistics are undeniable. Violent crime is up in Canada by 50% over Justin Trudeau's tenure. Regulation in industries like this is often provincial, though. So people are asking, well, what's Alberta doing? In addition to federal legislation on things like bail reform to ensure that folks put in vulnerable positions and risky jobs like security guards are protected. On the heels of Mr. Singh's death, we received an email to talk@ryanjesperson.com from a real talker named Lynn. Lynn says, in light of the recent death of this young college student, Harshandeep Singh, a Norquest student, by the way, real talkers may be interested in the training and working conditions that these individuals are facing in our province. The training course for security guards was developed almost 10 years ago in 2015, has not been updated since. The province continues to claim that it's in the process of updating it, but offers no timelines for when. Most often, these individuals in these types of jobs pay for both the training and updating out of their own pocket, including the exams, without assurances of even getting work. And when they do, they can oftentimes be working a low-paying, dangerous job. Many are new Canadians. Now, there's an opportunity to take in-person training, but many choose the online version. There are some credible training programs where students receive good instruction, but the outdated course limits what can be covered in the 40 hours that they're in the classroom. The security companies who hire them are under no obligation to provide hands-on training before deploying them to a job site. Lynn says unless the province gets its act together and rolls out a course that actually prepares these vulnerable people for the job they're being asked to do, Mr. Singh will not be the last one to suffer the consequences of inaction. Lynn says, I urge you to invite someone from Alberta Justice to speak about this on the show. Thanks for the work that Real Talk does to keep local issues on the forefront. I'll let you know we do have an ask in with the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Services, Deputy Premier Mike Ellis. And right now, I'm grateful that Mike Byrne is making time for us this morning. Mike, out of Calgary, is the founder of Scope Safety and Security. Mike, good morning. Obviously a horrific story out of Edmonton last Friday. What was the first thing you thought of when you heard about it?
Yeah, like for most of us, it was shocking that it occurred, but unfortunately, not surprising either. There's been an increasing trend in harm to security all across the country. Unfortunately, this one resulting in death. But it is a growing trend, and it's definitely a conversation that's being had in our industry, but we're starting to have this conversation outside of our industry as well.
Yeah, people will recognize the name Dmytro Martenko. People will remember Jeremy McKenzie out of Winnipeg, a security guard who was stabbed while on duty about 5 years ago. Just so we have an understanding of the context of your perspective, what does your team do at Scope Safety and Security?
So our goal is to help develop security once they completed that mandatory training that you just mentioned earlier, and to try and help fill those skills gaps that are occurring. We work with a few employers, as you're saying, they're under no mandatory obligation. So those few employers who do choose to upskill their staff is great, but it is few and far between. And our goal is to try and modernize the approach that the guards are facing right now in light of the minimum regulations.
Let me get your frank assessment of the adequacy of the training and certification standards for security guards in Alberta. Like, in your mind, are there gaps, obvious ones, glaring ones that are leaving people ill-prepared for this often dangerous work?
Yes, significantly from top to bottom. For example, you don't have to have any education or experience or requirement to own a security company or to be a manager. You only have to be regulated and licensed to be either frontline patrol. So there are some companies out there that I know personally where the management or the owners have no experience in this, and they're in a mentoring position, and that's causing some significant challenges and risks.
We're hearing a lot of people say that the physical training, or I saw somebody describe it as situational training for these guards, is inadequate. What sort of a training do you think could occur to better prepare people for this type of work?
So this is where it becomes a little bit challenging, because if you look at security, almost like the trades, you got your drywall, you got your electricity, electrical, plumbing, all these sorts of things. Security is kind of a broad term with all these specialties, and it's not a one-catch-all situation where, for example, a guard that's working in retail and have to do arrests and thefts would be very different, like the apartment complex. And so really the idea, I would think, would be to have not necessarily situational, but going through like that critical thinking, ongoing development and practice, not just one and done approach to employment. And I get that there's financial challenges there. There's a lot of end clients who don't want to pay premium prices to get a premium service. So there's a lot of factors that come into play, but definitely an element of ongoing development and culture, and meeting real-time assessments is huge. A lot of people just don't know how to measure risk, and they're being put into jobs to make decisions that they don't know about.
I 100% understand what you're getting at. I mean, as a security guard, at sort of a mom and pop type strip mall that sees a relatively small amount of traffic, relatively little crime, has good lighting, lots of, you know what I'm getting at, is going to be very different than somebody that might be in a scenario, an apartment complex like this one, where people say it's known to police in an area that's no stranger to the call of sirens late at night. Who's making the call there? Is this the security companies themselves on who they're deploying and where?
Yeah, it's very much down to that. And many of them just treat this as a staffing agency more so than as a service. Even just recently, in light of recent events, I had a student in one of my classes a couple of days ago that was like, I'm new to the job. I'm working alone, and their story feels very parallel to what happened in Edmonton. And, there's a lot of worry there. And, it really comes down to the decision-making of the staff within the organization. There's no oversight, there's no guidelines, there's no best practices. Even when we talk about the training, I know the province commented that there's occupational health and safety training in the course. That's kind of a stretch of an explanation. There's a few points that's talked on, again, is outdated. And to be a trainer, even in person in the classroom for security training, you don't have to have a lot of educational academic experience in the field. All you need is 2 years of security experience and one qualification to teach something else like first aid, and you can now run a security training program. So the standards are very low, and the outcome is starting to affect that. And the people enrolling in these programs have a lot of trust, and they're trusting that the program's going to work for them, the employer is going to support them, and there's a lot of gaps along the way.
Mike, that's an example right there. You say one of your students, this is a real life example, called you recently, said, I'm brand new on the job, I'm by myself. So what do you tell someone in that circumstance? What did you tell him?
So in those moments, I kind of just really talk about, what type of environment are you in? Let's talk about how we can keep you safe. If you're in a situation by yourself, do you know where you can hide if you have to? Do you know that you can pull a fire pull station? That's faster than a 911 call, right? We talk about the realities of how to act quickly, how to act fast, and how to read a situation the best you can to get the best possible results. Because we have a lot of people who come from very quiet families, very quiet neighborhoods, very little experience with conflict or challenging behavior. So they don't know how to read those signs in advance. So they go in really uncertain, and then they find out the hard way, unfortunately.
There's a lot of people are talking about, I've seen a few people in our live chat talk about, this guy being unarmed. And obviously that is the case. It strikes me as a bit more of an American solution to sort of, assume that if everybody was armed, scenarios would have different outcomes. But, do you think that that's maybe something we should look at? I mean, there's been talk about, sheriffs being armed or unarmed. There'd be questions, I guess, around training. What's your thought on whether or not it might be time to have a conversation about arming security guards in Alberta?
I think that'd be a difficult conversation to have at this time because in order to get into that stage, you have to look at a lot of decision making and understanding and critical thinking and problem solving. And so we don't even have those in place yet. So even just that, one of the reasons why a lot of organizations don't even want to teach physical training is because the liabilities associated with bad decision making. Now, if you add even approved weapons like batons that are in place, that becomes a challenge. Or, we talk about body armor for protective elements. There's no requirement for this, but a lot of clients and security companies are worried about the optics of how this looks, of being too enforcement. And there's just not enough conversation around safety, and that not everybody has to shop from the same catalog of solutions.
Right.
There's a lot of other countries who deal with similar problems that have more creative solutions. And, we just need to have that conversation in a realistic way and hold companies accountable to do better. They don't need government regulations to improve on how to do their business practices. Right. So there's a lot of this that has to come into conversation.
Yeah, I think I won't speak for you, Mike, but I'd suggest we could probably both agree that a baton would have done absolutely nothing for this poor kid. 3
Absolutely.
days on the job, put into a situation facing a career violent offender with what appears to be a sawed-off shotgun. Who pushed him downstairs and shot him in the back. I want to ask about de-escalation techniques and sort of, reportedly witnesses are telling police are telling journalists that reportedly Mr. Singh intervened in an argument that was happening between these two individuals, both of them charged with first-degree murder, Evan Rain and Judith Soto, both 30 years of age. What, like, for example, at scope, safety, and security, what are you able to teach in the context of de-escalation techniques that may help security guards in these type of situations?
So a lot of what we do is just really try and focus and observe on the behavior, right? So in that sense, people speak more with their body than with their mouth. And reading a situation on being tense, proximity, intensity, right? Those are all things we want to measure first. And if it looks like a conversation can be had from a distance, safely, reasonably, that's always the best option. I always call it a temperature check. Check the temperature of the situation before going in. But as we mentioned, there's a lot of people who just don't have those experiences. So even in some organizations where they teach, and I'll put in quotations, de-escalation, is often lecture-based without a lot of practice. And so because of that, you have a classroom theory, just like first aid, you have a mannequin on the ground, it all makes sense. But then when you put it in real life, all the scenarios and factors change dramatically. There's not a lot of on-site training from trained professionals that have gone through this that can actually mentor you in real time. And so when it comes to reading body language, reading tone, verbal cues, even cultural elements that come from a lot of factors, this is a huge thing to kind of read all at once. And so it's kind of like social illiteracy. It becomes very difficult to de-escalate it if you don't know how to read it.
Yeah, no kidding. Mike, you briefly alluded to maybe some international examples, other jurisdictions where they might do private security or might regulate it, might train their guards better than us. Can you give an example of a nation or a jurisdiction that's kind of leading the charge and what they're doing?
So I'll kind of give an example. I don't know if I'd put in the category of leading, but an example of different solutions to similar problems would be, the United Kingdom. They have aspects where there's not just one license for all jobs, that in order to qualify for certain skills and qualifications, you've got to get so many hours of experience in, and then you got to qualify for this additional training that upgrades your license, that then gets you into here. So for example, let's say front door access control. That's where there's a lot of conflict, right? And a lot of, as we're talking about, de-escalation. So you wouldn't be there as your first job. You'd be there after 2 or 3 years of experience of working with the public after quite a while. Where in Canada, it's very common that when you have no experience, we put you immediately at the front door for conflict. And so just taking little models like that can go a long way towards at least trying to break the mold and trying to solve new problems with new solutions, as opposed to, as you mentioned, 2010, 2014 guidelines to meet the current concerns we're seeing.
Yeah. Mike, in closing, I'm just curious for your perspective on this as somebody who knows the industry well. We'll talk about the responsibility of government here. And oftentimes when violent crime happens, obviously, you look at policy, you look at federal policy, you look at provincial policy. We're talking about training here. How much of this do you think falls on government? How much responsibility do you think industry needs to take? Is it a shared responsibility? What would a perfect scenario look like to you?
For me, I'd say it's definitely a shared responsibility. I think that the government should have regulations in place in regards to how businesses operate, how they keep their staff safe, and including expectations on management and their training and requirement. I think there should be accountability within the industry in the sense of, instead of racing to the bottom on price, but really focus on, this is what we need to do as an industry. This is how we need to look after our staff. And then also for the clients that are using security services, to hold their service provider a lot more accountable. That, if you pay peanuts, you're going to get monkeys kind of aspect. And so when you hold your service provider accountable, you can ask these questions like, yes, do they have training? But how often do they actually practice it? How often do they renew it? Do they know how to do an assessment of risk, right? And things like this.
Mike Byrne is the founder of Scope Safety and Security. You can learn more about what they do by visiting scope-safety.com. Mike, thanks for sharing your informed perspective with us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you bet. In just a second, we're going to talk to Rich LaForge. Rich is the chair of ASIS Chapter 156 out of Edmonton. This is an organization, actually an international organization. This is their wheelhouse, so we'll get a different perspective on this. Plus, we're going to jump into the Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. I see a lot of you talking about root causes. I see a lot of you talking about the accused in this situation. That is obviously an area where we need to and will focus in this episode. This episode's happening with the support of Acapella Catering, and this time of the year, They want you to remember that this locally owned and operated company has been serving the metro Edmonton region, our hometown, for nearly 35 years. Edmonton's premier wedding, corporate, and major event caterers. And of course, as holiday season is in full swing, they're inviting you to bring in a catered holiday lunch to the office for as little as $15.75 per person, or let Acapella do all the heavy lifting and host the office to a hot turkey lunch with all the fixins for as little as $28.50 per person. If you're entertaining at home, their award-winning holiday take and bake dinners, you can have a full turkey dinner for 4 to 6 people on the table in half an hour. How great would that be? You know, while many Edmontonians, plant-based households are also opting for the everything but the bird menu. There you go, Johnny. Just the sides. They've got you covered. For further questions, you want to request a quote, you want to connect with them directly, check out acapellacatering.com. Our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy have the We're Hiring sign out for 2025. If you're looking for a new opportunity, you're looking to join a young, growing, dynamic company, the fastest growing solar installers in Western Canada, check out the careers link at kubienergy.ca. They're looking for staff across the board, 4 different locations, Lethbridge, Edmonton, Calgary, and of course Kamloops, BC. You'll be working across Western Canada on industrial solutions, helping grow Canada's green energy footprint. Kubi Renewable Energy, the careers link open today, plus a free quote available for those of you looking to get solar installed at kubienergy.ca. If your home improvement is more on the organization front, let me invite you to take 2 minutes and browse californiaclosets.ca today. Custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. I love the idea of putting a design consultation under the tree for that very difficult to buy partner of yours, you know, the one that seems to have everything but none of it is organized. Why not join them? Go out, grab a coffee or a mimosa, and go visit the design team at California Closets. They have beautiful showrooms. They can blow your mind with different creative storage solutions, and they can work with your budget. You can book that free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca. And we're so grateful for our friends at Complete Care Restoration, quite frankly, proud of the work that they're doing in Jasper and other Alberta communities that have been impacted by wildfire. You know, that's not all they do, though. Their teams year-round are deployed to communities and individual residences, businesses that have been impacted by things like sewer backups, black mold, asbestos, smoke damage, whatever it is, they do it, restoring properties and rebuilding peace of mind. Plus, they'll work directly with your insurance company so you can take that off your plate. You can find them online at completecarerestoration.ca. Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. Obviously, a lot of you with strong opinions on this, and it's understandable. There's a video, by the way, around. Obviously, we've seen it reportedly of the murder of Mr. Harshandeep Singh. Quite obviously, Johnny, I think, of the murder. Edmonton Police have yet to confirm that that is indeed the case, but it's a tough one to watch. We've elected not to show it on Real Talk. It shows him being pushed down the stairs and shot in the back. Erica on our live chat says, I fear that the more we talk about the system and how it's failed, the less we're going to talk about the real place to put the blame. That's the scumbag killer, and that would be further injustice to the victim. M. Aitken says there's virtually no training for most security guards. Vamp Fashion says we can't usually plan guard safety without analyzing what hazards there are and then how to mitigate them, and that's absolutely true. It's a pleasure to welcome Rich LaForge to the program. Rich has more than a 20-year career in the security industry, started as a guard and worked up to an executive role for a national Canadian-based security provider. He's the chair of ASIS Chapter 156. Rich, thanks for joining us today. Obviously a brutal situation, but not an isolated one.
No, unfortunately, it's not isolated at all. It's terrible. The situations that we ask the security professionals in the world to kind of step in, and it definitely needs addressing. I agree with a lot of the comments in your chat there, but also I think we have to do a lot of. It's a multifaceted thing. There's a 3-pronged approach in the security world. Three primary bodies involved, and that's the provider, the client, and then the government oversight, and then I can't speak to the law enforcement side of it, but I can definitely try to make an impact on the security side.
Just so we understand what ASIS is all about, Chapter 156, you're obviously based out of Edmonton in the northern Alberta region, but ASIS has been around since 1955. ASIS International, a global community of security practitioners. Can you give us a sense of what the organization does and who you represent?
Yeah, so it's essentially its primary function is networking and education for security professionals, but it brings together groups of security professionals that would primarily be siloed otherwise. It provides an expertise kind of beacon for everyone in your technical side on the equipment and the install to your guard services companies. And it kind of brings us all together. It provides designations for individuals, similar like an MBA in security type of thing. It kind of gives us all a way to pool our expertise in that non-competitive format. We bring together groups that are normally fighting for contracts, sit them down at the table, and we're able to talk about situations like this and maybe bring forward ideas that would otherwise be siloed.
So, Rich, why don't we talk about the purpose of a security guard in Alberta versus what people are expecting them to do? Can you differentiate between the two?
Yeah, I think a lot of people expect a security guard to be this checkbox solution to everything that they're dealing with. And we really need to analyze why we put security where we do. A security guard's base security guard in Alberta's primary role is a deterrence model. You're an observe and report asset. So you're there to identify issues and deter by presence with a uniform or just, the petty criminal that doesn't want to be seen or caught or have someone call the police on them. The primary training is only 40 hours. It's an online course. Really, the only involved part of it is it's a proctored exam where someone stares at you from your computer if you're doing it at home. So it is very minimal training for the situations they're being placed in. Now, companies do step up their training, but it's all on the company to identify that. And it's a pretty low margin industry when clients are we say don't race to the bottom, but the client side isn't really helping with that sometimes. And so a lot of expectation lands on these security guards to solve problems that the program isn't initially designed to solve.
Rich, I've got a message here from a first responder in Edmonton asking to remain anonymous for obvious reasons. Says that Peacock building where Mr. Singh was killed should never have had a security guard on duty. When we respond there for alarms or medical calls, we do not enter the building until police arrive. He says, what I've heard is that the Red Alert gang has taken over in there and made it extremely dangerous. If they know it's dangerous enough that they don't send in first responders without police, why the hell would they make a 20-year-old security guard work there?
Yeah, I watched that video quite a bit, both the hallway angle and the stairwell angle. Very tough to watch, obviously, but I kind of forced myself to watch it because I think way is not going to be a service to this poor young man. You look at that hallway, you look how he was approached. I work with law enforcement individuals every day. A single law enforcement individual or a fully trained individual in that situation is in trouble. Training is important, but training when you've ignored all.
I wonder if maybe we've lost Rich's signal there. We're talking to Rich LaForge. Rich, we've got you back. You dropped out there for a second. You said,
sorry.
No, that's fine. You said you said a trained police officer in that exact same scenario. You're basically describing somebody who has a shotgun pointed at their face.
Yeah,
you said they're in trouble.
Yeah. So I look at security services as, why are we placing security there? What is the purpose? A guard's purpose is to help you identify concerns, deter problems, but you don't stop there. So is the purpose of booking security for there? Do you have a reason? Are they submitting security reports saying you've got a ton of problems? Are you taking that data and then doing anything with it? Or are you just putting a security guard there so that you can say you provide security? I don't think that we should ever put people in that situation. That dumbs them down from being a human person to just this checkbox on a chart.
100%. Tay is in our Real Talk live chat, says this poor kid had absolutely no idea what he was getting into, says he had no business being there and somebody needs to be held accountable. Where does accountability start here? I mean, number one, obviously the shooter. Like, that's maybe it's a completely different conversation, or at least it's a different angle on the conversation. But there's the company that either trained or didn't train him and put him there in a very dangerous part of town 3 days into the job. And then where does it go from there? Like, would you break it down for us?
Yeah, so definitely the company. One other individual I was talking to said that there was an incident where the primary guard that was there was actually shot with pepper spray or some sort of OC spray previous, which is why this individual was there only 3 days on the job. So obviously they had things, warning signs that they should have paid attention to. But beyond that, the people who run this building are booking security. Like, they're asking for security. Security companies don't just show up. They're getting paid to be there. Is that appropriate to look for companies to put people there? And then if we go even broader on the government oversight side, security guard licensing is up in the thousands of percentiles since we've returned from COVID. The staffing and oversight model in Alberta has not grown to meet the same percentage increase, or at least grown with. So auditing and ensuring things are safe from an oversight, the legislation is it's not equipped to deal with it from both the guard services side and the client side. But the auditors and the staff that go around and ensure everything is being done properly, they're not out there as much as they should be.
Rich, how often does this happen? There's kind of three things, it seems to me, at play. This young man, Harshandeep Singh, may he rest in peace, just a absolutely tragic loss, and his death is like resonating across it's like, even for the people on the podcast, if they haven't seen a picture of this young man, just like these bright eyes, I've obviously never met, just looks like the most delightful guy. He wanted to be a law enforcement officer. He was fascinated with planes. He was like, do you know what I mean? Like, this is just a bright young guy, gunned down. It's the type of thing where it just infuriates members of the public. Mm-hmm. And then you look and you go, high risk area, nighttime, by himself. Like, how often is this happening? I think I know the answer. This is happening all over the place.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is this happens all the time. The amount of there's two parts. The amount that, as a security provider, you're asked to provide security. You're put in a position where you need to tell you have to tell people no, because they're asking for a security guard, a human being, to go stand in an area where they wouldn't go stand all night. Yeah. And then the amount that some security companies are saying yes they're both too high. It's crazy that we would think that you look at that hallway and then you, as a member of the public, say, I'm going to pay you sub $20 an hour to go stand in that hallway, and you're gonna deal with whatever comes at you. No way. No way. No one's going to say yes to that. That's absolutely insane.
Can you give us an idea, if you're just tuning in, live streaming on 7 different platforms, presented by California Closets? We're talking to Rich LaForge. Rich is the chair of ASIS Chapter 156, based out of the Edmonton region. Can you give us a sense of the stats of what they look like on guard license deployment being up? How many guards are being put out there? How many guards are being hired versus, regulatory requirements, improvements in training, that sort of a thing? Give us a sense of how Alberta's keeping up or not.
Yeah, so the stats I've heard, and they do vary, I say in the thousands of percentiles, because I've heard upwards of 4,000% increase in guard licensing since 2020, we'll say.
4,000?
Yeah, it's crazy. And my fear is that we're moving to this accuracy by volume model, where if we just throw enough security guards into the world, somehow we'll solve problems. And that is not how this works. The security guard individual is a piece of a broader puzzle. That's why you see security companies now are not just guard companies. They're risk assessment companies. They provide technical services. There's all these facets of the industry where a guard is just a piece. They're just part of a greater puzzle. And if you're not willing to address the other areas, some of them social in your building, some of them design of areas, creating what we call septed, creating areas that where crime is more likely to occur because of dark spots or bad lighting or anything like that. If you're not willing to address all these pieces, stop putting people in there. Stop putting people to just stand there until they get hurt. For every just ultimate unfortunate incident like this, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of incidents of assault. If this video shows this man walk up, this garbage human who has a long rap sheet walk up and just, punch this guard in the face, are we having this broad discussion?
Right.
And that happens all the time. And it's unfortunate,
to say the least.
Yeah.
In closing, for now, Rich, a lot of people are this issue might be on their radar for the very first time. We take stuff for granted, right? Until something goes sideways. I remember I didn't think a whole lot about the safety of armed guards on those armored trucks until that tragedy in Edmonton at the Hub Mall several years ago. You remember that when the staff were betrayed by their colleague and shot on a job. I mean, then all of a sudden people start thinking about armored guards and what they encounter. We're thinking now about provincial legislation. Probably wasn't on most of our radar before. Industry standards, accountability, whatever you want to call it. What's something you'd like to see and now that there's political pressure?
I'd like to see real legislation put out there that holds both parties accountable in the delivery service model. So you have there is an accountability obviously inherent to every employer to ensure that their people are going to a safe workplace. That should not change. That should be enforced harder, in my opinion. There needs to be pre-job hazard assessments on any job that's done. And there's supposed to be. That legislation exists, but I can tell you it's not done. People deploy, they get a call on a Friday night saying, my fire alarm system's out, I need a guard. That guard gets sent to the building without a pre-job hazard inspection. That building turns out to be like this building. And that guard's standing there all night. And that needs to change. And the only way it's going to change is through enforcement of existing legislation and beefing up the penalties. But I do believe that there needs to be some look at of people who book security guards. Maybe some sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say the word registration. That can be a trigger word for people, but something that in order to book security guards, you need to confirm that you have put time into thinking about how safe your building is. Because if you're not thinking about how safe your building is, one, in this situation, it's an apartment building. So you're incumbent to ensure that that's a safe building as well without security being there. So before you book a human being to stand in your place, there's got to be something on you for that.
Yeah, and like I 100% like there's going to be business owners that are concerned about their bottom line, and they know that part of what's impacting their bottom line in a negative way is that they're either there's shoplifting or there's crime in the parking lot or whatever. So they know they got to get a security guard, but like the business is barely making it, so they got to get like the cheapest available option. They want the optics of security, but they can't really afford it, so they go to the lowest bid and that sort of a thing. And then the lowest bid, I'm assuming, is probably paying its guards the lowest wage, and the lowest wage earners are probably the people that are maybe vulnerable. Maybe they're new Canadians, or they have the lowest training, or they have the lowest education, or whatever it is. And this cycle just kind of perpetuates itself. Like, I mean, I guess there's got to be, in a perfect world, checks and balances. There's got to be accountability at about 5 or 6 different levels here.
Yeah, absolutely. And another piece we could touch is mandatory equipment. Guards should have vests. In this day and age, guards need vests. We don't deploy any sort of law enforcement without some sort of extra armor padding of any kind. Most guards that you'll see in high-risk areas wear stab-proof vests. I believe that we should step that up, but it's on the company currently to pay, source, go out and get all of that, and then try to add it into their bill rates. If things were made mandatory, it's not like that anymore. It just comes with the base cost. They still have to pay, source, and do it, but if a client is made to accept it, some clients will say in high-risk areas, I don't want a guard with a vest. I don't like the look of it. It looks too military. It scares my people. And then as a security provider, you're left to say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. And then you lose the contract, or you listen to your client. So.
Jeez. Yeah, no kidding. Listen, Rich, we appreciate your perspective on this and your availability on short notice. Thanks for talking to us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, you got it. Rich LaForge is the chair of ASIS Chapter 156 on our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power. Vamp Fashion says if we had a criminal justice system with actual teeth, life is life, death penalty. Well, there we go. Real sentences. We likely wouldn't need locks, let alone security guards. Make crime not pay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Death penalty is going to start a whole new different conversation. I'm not sure that it's relevant here, but I will say, like we talked about yesterday, the accused in this situation, there's 2 of them. Evan Rain and Judith Soto, both facing first-degree murder charges. But according to the video that is reportedly from the apartment building, the video that is reportedly of Mr. Singh's death. It appears to be Mr. Rain that's pulling the trigger. Mr. Rain has faced more than 30 criminal charges over a number of years, including kidnapping, a woman forced into the trunk of a car at gunpoint. There's a long list. You can Google it yourself and see it. It's the type of person that, in my candid estimation, if you'll permit me this, should not be roaming the streets with a short-barreled or sawed-off shotgun, to say the very least. So that's where the issue starts. The federal conversation on this, a big one, has got to be bail reform, right? That's a big part about this. And sentencing, right? Can we have that conversation in meaningful fashion? I guarantee you that's going to be a conversation that'll have more fire behind it over the next number of months. We're expecting a federal election next fall, if not before. This is something that I would expect the Conservatives will continue to pressure the Liberals and the NDP on. The provincial level, Alberta's Conservative government, what is it doing to improve the safety of its workers, right? This is a life and death situation. In this case, tragically, death on December 6th for Harshandeep Singh. And what about cities? What are cities doing? What are police services doing? I mean, I saw, I think it was Alberta Girl that said here, there's some parts of Edmonton's downtown and other downtown says there's such a problem with gangs and crime, homelessness, drugs, that no person should be working as a security guard there. That from Alberta Girl. That's Alberta Girl's thought. There's obviously a perception issue for obvious reasons. Innocent people being attacked in LRT stations. Hardworking 3-day on the job security guards being shot in the back with shotguns. This is a real problem, and it affects all of us. I don't know about you. I kind of like you take security guards for granted. You see them at the mall, like Christmas shopping. Everybody's doing Christmas shopping. I see some of you talking about the commissionaires, the retired folks, oftentimes the men and women that work these jobs and they want to get out of the house 20 hours a week, and so they're working security jobs. And oftentimes, they're thrust into scenarios where you, quite frankly, never want your grandparent or your parent in that type of situation. They're put into scenarios to de-escalate what could turn into a violent outcome with either very little training or, quite frankly, not the physical tools to protect themselves or to manage a situation if it goes sideways. If we're missing something on this conversation, if you want to add something to this, if you have personal experience in some context related to this, we'd love to hear from you. To talk at ryanjesperson.com. That's where you can send us an email. In just a moment, we're going to check in with Grand Prairie's mayor, Jackie Clayton. Want to get her take on this $70 billion data center. Kevin O'Leary, a.k.a. Mr. Wonderful, says he's bringing it to Alberta. The premier's excited. The critics say it's never going to happen. We'll find out what Grande Prairie's mayor thinks about the plan coming up in just a minute. First, I want to remind you about Athabasca University. One of the beautiful things about Canada's Open University is that there's no such thing as, the start of school or registration, and there's really no such thing as downtime as well, generally speaking, because every single student there is designing their education, completing their education wherever and whenever it works for them. Everybody's on their own pace, which is absolutely perfect. If you want to take some time off, or if you want to hammer down, if you need to step away to take care of your family or yourself, or if you want to go pedal to the metal, you can make it happen at Canada's Open University. You can check out the website, athabascau.ca, to learn more about how AU works, including student supports. And don't forget, as of September of this year, AU's Board of Governors approving a 10% reduction to tuition for First Nation, Métis, and Inuit students. You can learn more about that at athabascau.ca/Indigenous. Hey, if you don't have plans on January 25th and you're going to be in the Metro Edmonton region, I want to invite you to join me and about 1,000 others at the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce Edmonton Chamber Ball. This is a grand celebration presented by Service Credit Union at the beautiful Hall D at Edmonton's Convention Center. This is the premier black tie event for Edmonton's business community. Step into a world of unmatched elegance and sophistication. At Chamber Ball 2025, you can get your golden ticket today. It's going to sell out, so don't wait. At edmontonchamber.com. And our friends at UCAN Youth Services want to remind you, if you are an employer and you're hiring entry-level positions with room for opportunity, room for growth, they'd love to partner with you. UCAN Youth Services is a non-profit charitable organization dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. Sometimes that's a training program to get into a new job. Sometimes it's getting back into school. You can learn more about what they do, make a donation, or connect about an employment partnership at ucan.ca. All right, Grande Prairie's mayor standing by. We're going to get to Jackie Clayton in just a minute. But first, to tee this up, this $70 billion proposed data center, just about a half hour outside Grande Prairie, pitched by former Conservative Party leadership candidate, Dragon's Den, Shark Tank star Kevin O'Leary, would be the biggest real estate development in Alberta history, one of the biggest in Canadian history. $70 billion to a region of northern Alberta that appears to be perfectly suited for such a build. But the critics say it'll never happen. That includes the lead columnist for Canada's National Observer, Max Fawcett, who joined us to talk about it just one episode ago. Kevin O'Leary is playing Alberta for a $70 billion fool.
There's a valley where the brightest minds unite, where electrons, machines, and data come together in an algorithmic dance.
I was raised to smell out BS. This just gives off a very, very strong whiff of it. Who's the driving force behind it? Kevin O'Leary, who is a very talented salesperson. But when it comes to actually building things, the end product being a success, his track record is basically zero. He is trying to capitalize on a frenzy right now out there about artificial intelligence, about data centers.
This isn't something that Albertans, generally speaking, should laugh off.
It is clearly a big deal. Every major tech company really pushing into this space. This is the future, and we should want our piece of the pie. And I get nervous when it looks like they see it as an opportunity to sell more natural gas. This region has a bunch of natural gas assets, and those can be put to work. Customers of these data centers, they do not want natural gas to be powering these. They want these to be clean electrons, and I don't see any plan in place for that.
Okay, so that's Max. He says, let's not poo-poo the idea of investment in tech and data centers in Alberta. He just doesn't like this one. Let's find out how the mayor of Grande Prairie feels about it. Jackie Clayton, kind enough to join us on what I know is a very busy day. Mayor Clayton, what do you make of this $70 billion plan? Are you optimistic?
In regards to the project, that's between the MD of Greenview and the proponents of the project. What we're really looking forward to is having conversations about what the future of our region is. And I'm happy, as you know, to always promote Grande Prairie. If this project were to go ahead, it would be an incredible opportunity, not only for Northwestern Alberta, but for all of Alberta.
Yeah, no kidding.
So looking forward to, hearing more. We were in early conversations about what the city's prepared for growth, what the city's preparation for residential service land, for non-residential service land. We're prepared for opportunities that come to the region. And we've said for a long time, what's good for the region is good for the city.
So what sort of involvement would the city have in pitching something like this? I would imagine something like this doesn't just land in your lap by accident. Have you been involved in advocacy or in sort of like setting the table for these types of talks?
Well, for a while, we've worked as a very collaborative region, the MD, the city, the county. We work together on a regular basis. We recently formed an organization called Invest Northwest so that we're all speaking the same language, so that we are on the same page when we talk about what opportunities, what's available, what resource sectors are there. But for us, it's, providing those amenities to make a great community. Our airport is owned by the municipality. We have 7 flights a day out of Grande Prairie and into Grande Prairie. We, on a regular basis, talk about the great amenities we have to offer. We are the youngest city in Canada on populations over 25,000 people. We have a good growth rate. Our single-family housing price is below the provincial average. We talk about what it's like to live in Grande Prairie. We all use the same language about the opportunity. When you meet people from Grande Prairie, I always say they're either from Grande Prairie or they moved there for 5 years and never left. And Grande Prairie is an incredible place to live, to raise families. The entire region has endless opportunities, not only in business, but in quality of life.
Okay, so there's a few obvious reasons why this story is getting a lot of attention across the country. Number one, the price tag, $70 billion. Number two, the fact that Mr. Wonderful has his name attached to it. That's going to get a lot of attention. And then, of course, the AI video that we were kind of chuckling at. But I quite frankly, I said to Johnny yesterday, yesterday. I hope that comes true. I would love to see a build outside Grande Prairie with buildings rising up out of the ground and eagles soaring overhead. That'd be absolutely amazing. But aside from this high-profile project, how common is it to see discussions like this about big, significant investments, international players coming in, targeting this region? Like, give us your sense as a mayor, not just of the city. I mean, I know that's your jurisdiction, that's your wheelhouse, that's your electorate, but of the region itself. How common is it to see interest, tire kicking around big investment?
Well, when you're in such proximity to the Montney and the Duvernay, which is probably the single largest northern gas or natural gas play in North America, conversations of large investment happen on a regular basis. This is something new, and it diversifies our economy. We've been known to be a capital for forestry, for agriculture, for energy. We're a service area to over 300,000 people in a community of 70,000 people. So, the city, the county, the MD, on a regular basis have large investment conversations. This is significantly larger. A $70 billion investment, as you mentioned, will be the largest single investment in Alberta's history. And in a single investment, to think about what that would do for not only our region, our province, our country. We've said for a long time, Northwestern Alberta is the economic engine of the province, and Alberta is the economic engine of the country. So these conversations are significantly important. If it looks exactly like the video at the end of the day, that's to be seen. The topography of the land in the video, it replicates what is in that valley south of Grande Prairie. It looks like that when you drive from Grande Prairie to Grand Cache. What the buildings play out to be, who the partners are at the end of the day, that's a conversation between the O'Leary Ventures team and the MD of Greenview. I just know that we are and always have been ready for significant growth. We've seen booms in our region, in our city, in the early 2012s. We've been strategically preparing for the next big growth spurt in our community for a while now. So we have service residential land, service non-residential land, and collaboratively, I would argue that our region works together better than any other region in Alberta. So we're looking forward to seeing what's next, and we're always ready for these conversations.
Obviously makes sense for the region to work together, right? Like, it's kind of that new idea. This was a big part of kind of Mayor Iveson's approach, I remember back in the day when he was the mayor of Edmonton, kind of that regional collaboration. Who do you... you're not going to want to answer this, but I want to ask the question. Who do you see kind of as your competitor? Like, is the Metro Edmonton region or is the Central Alberta region, are they competitors with Grande Prairie when it comes to attracting international business? Like, international investors don't, quite frankly, really know the difference between Grande Prairie and Fort McMurray or Fort McMurray and Innisfail, do they?
Well, I would say that for the Greenview Industrial Gateway, their competitor would be the Alberta Heartland, the industrial heartland, but that's been 20 plus years in the making. So the MD of Greenview has been working on this Greenview Industrial Gateway called the GIG for a long time now. It's the next industrial heartland. And so when we talk at a large scale, no competition between Central Alberta and Northwestern Alberta, that's not a reality. There's a significant focus on the corridor from Edmonton to Northwestern Alberta. That partnership between those regions is significant. Organizations and companies have offices in both Grande Prairie and Edmonton. I would say that that's a regular happening. You do hear in regards to competition between the North and the South. There's significant difference between southeastern Alberta and northwestern Alberta in the sense that we don't have the water constrictions and concerns that the South has. And we're very fortunate to be serviced by multi-industries, as I mentioned, forestry and ag, and having the regional hospital and the largest cancer clinic north of Edmonton. That healthcare sector, the professional services sector is a significant focus for us as well. Our post-secondary institution is a polytech that is turning around industry-focused, industry-important courses. So working with industry to establish what programs they need for the future and for growth. And so, as you mentioned, collaboration has been a conversation that's happened in regions for a long time. I would argue with anybody that Northwestern Alberta is doing it the best.
Let me. I know you probably didn't appreciate. I know you saw the interview yesterday. The allegation, the suggestion that it's tough to convince the world's most talented and skilled workers to move to a place like Grande Prairie. The comparison may be unfair to Silicon Valley, implied that it might be quite a bit more difficult to convince somebody to live in Grande Prairie and commute a half hour outside. What would you say to the critics?
Yeah, I would say I would arguably probably not find many places in Canada that compare to Silicon Valley, maybe the interior of BC. However, I'll go back to the fact that we're a young community. We have amenities and recreation and culture that people are unaware of. We have the second largest public art gallery in Alberta in Grande Prairie.
Really?
We have, oh, absolutely. See, like, and the road goes both ways, Ryan. It's not always us coming to Edmonton. And so I think when we host games like the Alberta Winter Games, and I hear from parents from Edmonton and Calgary that had no idea of the facilities we had. And so when I bring mid-sized city mayors to our community to learn more, they're often astonished by what we have to offer. And so Grande Prairie for a long time, it's been a community that's affordable. Or, as I mentioned, our family housing prices are below the provincial average. We're a young community. We have amenities. We have airport that travels 7 flights a day. The roads, we are on the Canamex corridor, and we're very strategically located for industry. And so Canada is a winter country. Northwestern Alberta is a winter city, and we embrace it as you do here in Edmonton. But I think the reality is that saying that people aren't going to go there isn't realistic. People go where the jobs are and where the opportunities are. And once you move to Grande Prairie, this community will give you as much as you're willing to give it. So like myself, I moved here in 1999 for 5 years and never left. And that's a common story you hear all the time. So I challenge people that, like Max, who say that it's not going to happen in Grande Prairie. If it's not going to happen in Grande Prairie, it's not going to happen anywhere. The reality is that Northwestern Alberta has lots to offer, and people enjoy living here.
Where did you move from, by the way?
From Kamloops, from British Columbia.
From Kamloops, right on. Okay, so one more thing that I want to ask you about that Max said, because obviously Grande Prairie has a bit of an embarrassment of riches when it comes to natural resources, but he implied that the backers of or investors in a big mega project like this data center, $70 billion data center, would not be interested in having it powered by natural gas. He said they'd want it powered by more clean energy. Is natural gas longer term a liability for Grande Prairie's future, or what's your response to what Max had to say about that?
Well, first of all, it's a little bit frustrating when I hear that natural gas isn't clean, but that's a different argument for a different day. I think the reality is that we are serviced by multiple sectors. We're not solely reliant on our energy sector. However, having another industry, diversity in our economy is a win. And so having that come to the region is significantly important. In regards to the logistics of what that project requires in regards to natural gas, the biggest part that I see as a positive is this isn't reliant on the grid. This is behind the fence. So, I mean, when people are worried about brownouts and Alberta's future in regards to electricity and energy, this isn't impacting. This is an opportunity to use a resource that we have to grow an economy, to grow a province, to grow jobs and the future of the province in regards to economic development. And so I look forward to hearing more on this project. I'm optimistic, extremely pleased that Northwestern Alberta is being recognized as a place that we know it is, a place of opportunity. And I'm, hopeful that in 2025, we'll hear more from the O'Leary Group, see more on the timing of phase 1 coming to fruition in 2027. And in the meantime, we'll prepare any information that they're looking for to know more about the region.
Mayor Jackie Clayton joining us in transit. We sure appreciate that. She's the mayor and, of course, a proud champion of Grande Prairie. We'll talk to you again soon, my friend. Have a Merry Christmas.
You too. Merry Christmas.
All right. Thanks for doing that. Listen, I hope it happens. I actually think that it would be an amazing project to see developed. It would be the talk of the nation. It'd be the talk of the world. It's such a bold and ambitious project, and I think it would require so many things to happen that it would be quite remarkable if it actually developed. I think that's why so many people are so cynical, and it probably also has something to do with Kevin O'Leary. Kevin O'Leary is the pro and the con in this, I think. The pro is that it drives a lot of attention. Of course, when he attaches his name to it, people immediately sort of raise their eyebrows and are intrigued. But I also think that his track record in business, and Max cited some examples on our episode yesterday, may prompt some people to believe that's not the case. We got an email from Jeff, who lives in Grande Prairie, to talk at RyanJesperson.com. Says, Jespo, as somebody who lives in GP, as soon as I saw the name Kevin O'Leary attached to the project you discussed with Max, I wasn't fooled for 1 second. Jeff says, I think Max perfectly said why not. O'Leary is a great salesman, but has he ever built something like this before? And the video promoting the project, where was all the snow and minus 40 for half the year and wildfire smoke for the other half? That from Jeff in Grande Prairie. I mean, I don't know. It's also like minus 40 in Edmonton for half of the year, and wildfire smoke impacts.
Not lately.
Not actually. It's been amazing this winter, but
last couple winters.
Wildfire smoke is kind of a reality for anybody, anywhere, as much as that sucks to say it. I understand the critics, and I think it's very easy. I think the de facto position on this is to be critical and cynical, but there is a tiny part of me, this optimist, that desperately wants something like this to happen because I think it would be amazing. For perspective, though, I mean, Mayor Clayton there talking about, the industrial heartland. We talk about like Sturgeon County and the amazing projects that they've done and the boom that they're or have been experiencing. But you look at probably the biggest or highest profile project, and for a number of reasons. Number one, cost overruns and the length and duration of the construction and the political hot potato that it was. But regardless, the Northwest Refinery, you guys remember that? Like that was a big, huge, massive undertaking. That was about a $10 billion price tag. So we're talking 7 times that investment with this project. On the Real Talk live chat, powered by Park Power, we got a whole bunch of different takes on this. By the way, Ken Kunemuth, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Ken. It's Ken K in our live chat. I see him in here participating again. Here he's talking about the Grande Prairie Museum of Lifted Pickups. Shout out Lifted Pickups. But Ken, we saw you yesterday with your $20 kick into our YouTube super chat, and that was my bad. I missed it. I wanted to recognize you for that, Ken. Ken said throw a few beers in the fridge for Max, and we will. We sure appreciate that. Tall Graham, kind of poking fun, says, maybe GP is the next million population city after Red Deer. Of course, that was Premier Smith's bold prediction. Others are saying, Tony wondering, wouldn't it make more sense to build the data center in the industrial area near the Edmonton airport? That from Tony. I have to wonder if probably cost would factor into that. That would probably be a big part of it, but you never know. Stuff happening around the Edmonton airport. Boy, is that really fast forwarding. Unbelievable. Whitrium says, well, natural gas is not clean. What's she going on about? I mean, I guess relatively speaking, right? If you're burning coal, people would rather see it be natural gas. If it's natural gas, advocates would rather see it be solar or wind, right? Am I right on this? I'm not the expert, but that's my guess. MA says fossil fuels aren't clean energy, full stop. Pseudoscientists, this idea that our energy is dirty is childish. Fair enough. Alberta Girl says, my cousin's daughter moved to GP to waitress. These are all anecdotal stories. Says my cousin's daughter moved to GP to waitress and get out of debt. She talked about her time there, though, and says she left as soon as she could. Okay. I mean, people have different stories. I can relate to moving to a community for a short period of time and never leaving. That's my story in Edmonton, as a matter of fact. But we connected with this community. I think it's like when you connect. Mayor Clayton's talking about, listen, if housing's affordable, if there's a scenario or a community where your family feels welcomed and connected, then that's the type of place where you're going to go. I mean, we've got family members that are in the Metro Vancouver, the Greater Vancouver region right now, that are paying like obscene amounts for rent and could never own a home. And I think that you look at opportunities in Alberta or elsewhere in Canada where the cost of a house is like a quarter or a fifth of what it is where they are. And some other, Canadians in other provinces might be wide open to opportunities like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm excited to see Kevin O'Leary move to Grande Prairie and enjoy all these scenic views that he's enjoying. But hey, I guess the first few things I thought immediately were like, number one, will it affect our grid? Like, you know what I mean? Like overall in Alberta, if it doesn't, great. Number two, does it make jobs or take away jobs? Like, yeah, building it is great. And then when it's done in 2026 or 2027, what happens then? Yeah. Does it take away jobs? Because that's... But then number three, I mean, like Max said yesterday, we need a piece of this pie. I think Alberta has always been oil and gas, and that's great. Let's keep that piece of the pie. But man, Wind, solar, we could be at the forefront of that. Data centers, we've already got 22, but nothing near this size. I think there's 12 small ones in Calgary or near around Calgary, but something of this size would just put us on the map so much. The only thing I'm concerned about is why do we need the snake oil salesman to fronting it? You know what I mean?
And
like we can do this on our own.
And at what cost?
We can do this on our own.
Like I see you in the live chat. I see all of you that are referencing AIMCO, that are talking about, Stephen Harper, the new chair of AIMCO. This is the Alberta Investment Management Corporation. Now they manage, I think off the top of my head, isn't it it's something like 200 and some billion in assets, of that, including the Heritage Savings Trust Fund. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, the AIMCO is going to go all in on this thing. I mean, to a certain degree, you can see it being something that the MD invests in, maybe by making the land available. They'll obviously be very favorable. You look at all these cities and all these jurisdictions, globally I'm talking about, that are dealing with the giants like Amazon and Google. And what do all of the agreements have in common, aside from, areas where employees want to live, that are attractive to recruit and retain workers, but also the taxes. I mean, they're basically paying nothing. They're getting the land for free or for a song, and it all works out well. But it makes sense for the MD, because the MD is going to collect the property taxes and the yada, yada, yada. You get it. I don't have to explain that. But you look at those trends. Obviously, the MD would roll out the red carpet and make that happen. I mean, this would be a once-in-a-lifetime unicorn-type deal to sign. The provincial government would obviously love to make it happen for many, many different reasons. But again, Albertans should be and are asking, at what cost? And that's something that's very, very relevant. Some of you are wondering about the power. John, you touched on it. Others have talked about it. Wise Kyle in our chat says that this is the whole project would be self-sustaining. All the power it uses is generated on site. I did want to touch and address Wise Kyle for a quick second. I do happen to know that he's heading in for heart surgery tomorrow, a member of our live chat community. And Kyle, we want to wish you well and wish your surgeons wisdom as they participate and carry out that operation tomorrow. We'll be thinking about you. This is the type of story where I think you want to be cynical. That's not a bad word. You want to be critical of it, but at the same time, we talked about this earlier. I don't ever want to come across like I'm cheering against the province. I don't want to come across like I'm laughing off interest in investing in Alberta. Because if this is a thing, what do we talk about all the time when it comes to Alberta's dependence? And I'm talking about budget. Alberta's dependence on oil and gas. It's enormous. And it's worked for many, many years until it hasn't, right? And then you look at when Alberta goes into a deficit budget position and what drives that and what the contributing factors are, the global price of oil, et cetera. And then people go, we got to diversify our economy. Now, in theory, this is exactly that. This is an example of that. But if it's not a real thing, we probably don't want to spend too much time getting distracted and excited about it. You can let us know what you think about this to talk@ryanjesperson.com. I suspect that there may be a submission or two for the flamethrower presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's coming up on our next episode, the next episode of Real Talk, which is going to be an awesome edition of the Real Talk Roundtable, by the way, coming up on Friday the 13th. Ooh, Friday the 13th of December. Talk@ryanjesperson.com is where you can send us those notes. I wanted to correct myself on something as well, and that's coming up. It's more of a grammatical or pronunciation correction, but I think we can all learn something together, or at least me. I'm definitely going to learn something I need to learn in just a quick second. But before I do, I want to remind you, we're talking about all these Alberta communities. You know, Friesen Brothers is established in 17 of them. This is still a family-owned business. It all started with one butcher shop, and it's just grown from there. Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown and Alberta owned, coming up on 75 years, and just an unbelievable celebration of this province we call home. They're proud to feature Alberta proteins in their butcher shop. All of the produce that they're bringing in is grown as close to Alberta as possible, and that includes the Christmas Satsuma oranges. Now, these are the traditional Japanese orange variety, but they're grown in California, and they're the absolute favorite Christmas orange of the team there, the produce team at Friesen Brothers, and us, quite frankly, here at Real Talk, because they're easy peeling, they're seedless, they're bursting with flavor, and they're not shipped from halfway around the world. You can learn more about the history of the original Japanese oranges, the Satsuma, on their website, friesen.com, and you can find them right now for a limited time at your local Friesen Brothers. We also wanted to shout out the hard-working public servants that are the members, the thousands of them, the members of Civic Service Union 52, that's CSU 52. They've been running a campaign for the last couple of months right now. You can check it out at edmontonforeveryone.ca. They're asking you to consider what the future of Edmonton's capital, or rather Alberta's capital city, looks like. They say now is the time to make smart decisions when it comes to budgets, when it comes to spending. Edmonton's at a crucial crossroads, and the choices made right now, the budget choices, that is, are going to shape the future for all of us. These are your 311 and 911 operators. These are your rec center personnel. These are transit folks, those that are helping out with DATS, that Accessible Transit Initiative, the heart and soul of Edmonton. Without them, the city doesn't function. You can show your support by getting behind their campaign. Budget for the things that matter by visiting edmontonforeveryone.ca. I kind of screwed up on something, and I think it was James that called me on it. And I want to own this one. Yeah, but you know what? I kind of realized, and I don't actually know the difference on this. But James in our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, Jesper, is it Silicon Valley or Silicon Valley? And I realized that you might go, like, what's
Silicon?
Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But I think I might have said Silicon Valley.
No, I think she did.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, well, it may have been me as well.
Everyone's a little tired this morning.
So I actually Googled, I'll be honest, as Mayor Clayton's talking, James, I saw you, I see you, and I Googled it, and I was like, Silicon versus silicone. Mm-hmm. And did you know, John, that silicon is a natural chemical element, while silicone is a man-made product. The words are often used interchangeably, but there are important differences. Whilst, and I don't get to say whilst very often, but I'm referencing primasil.com in explaining what is silicone rubber. While silicon is natural, silicone is silicone.
You're confusing yourself.
I'm trying to teach. This is what happens when the student tries to be the teacher. Whilst silicon is natural, silicone is a man-made polymer derived from silicon.
Yeah. So
there you are.
It's weird because Silicon Valley in California, it's confusing because Silicon Valley is also in California. That's Beverly Hills. It's mostly housewives.
Yeah, I've seen a few Silicon Valleys on that show, as a matter of fact. Jillian in the live chat, shout out Jillian, says if Alberta wants to attract young folks, it needs to look like it has an eye on the future, like it's not stuck in the past.
Yes.
She says, and maybe don't steal people's pensions.
Okay.
She says, I also don't see anybody coming here if the UCP takes our Canada pension plan away. She says, heck, I might even have to consider leaving. That's a story that we're obviously keeping an eye on, and I know that some people feel like the appointment of former Prime Minister Stephen Harper to the chair of the AIMCO board might be kind of like step number 2 or 3 in that journey of ultimately making way for an Alberta pension plan. It's something, of course, that we'll keep an eye on, and something that could be one of the defining political stories of 2025, if that is, as we expect it to be, on the Premier says she's going to put it to a referendum, and financially it makes the most sense to roll out a referendum like that when there's an election happening already, so you're not wasting tens of millions of dollars on facilitating it. There is a municipal election happening in the province of Alberta coming up next fall in October, and so I think it's probably safe to expect, or at least suggest, we could see a referendum on an Alberta pension plan in the fall of 2025. I'd be curious to see where that lands.
And this project ties into the next election and helping Danielle Smith. But I agree with Max. If the whole premise of it is, not bringing new talent, younger talent, like you just said, developing younger talent in Alberta, to have the premier data center in arguably the world, but definitely North America. That should be the premise. The premise should not be, holy crap, we can sell a lot of natural gas. And as soon as Max said that, I was like, man, that's exactly what I thought when I saw this video. Is this AI video looks great. Can we see some real specs, though? Some real blueprints, some real numbers on, because when somebody says 70 billion, hey, by the time it's done, it could cost 100. You don't know, right? So I want to see more numbers. And like you said yesterday, I'm proud to be living in Alberta, and I cheer for Alberta every day. But if the premise is just, hey, we're going to sell more oil and gas and not putting bringing all these young developing, like it'd be great to steal some Silicon Valley kids who are absolute geniuses and bring them to the biggest data center in North America here in Alberta and boast about it that we have this person and this team and we stole them from here because people want to come to Alberta, and it's not just, you know, a cash grab for ONG. But as I said, let's keep every piece of the pie. Let's keep oil and gas. Let's keep a little wind, some solar, some nuclear if it's not dangerous. Let's get all of it. Let's be at the forefront of all of it because we've got all this land, we've got all this energy, and if we had the great minds too that wanted to come here from other places, man, we'd be unstoppable.
100%. 100%. Want to tie up a few loose ends here. I see a lot of you in the chat pointing out that news has developed as we've been doing the show today.
Oh, I saw it this morning. Yeah,
I
didn't want to interrupt the theme.
Former Premier Rachel Notley has just announced that she will resign as an MLA. Of course, she stepped down as leader earlier this year. She'll resign as an MLA on the 30th of December. So coming up in just over a couple of weeks, in a few weeks from now, what we'll do is we will endeavor. Did you ever work with anybody that used effort as a verb? We will effort to get her on the show in early January. That'll be good. And of course, it'll be good to get kind of her recap. She'll probably want some time away. I would imagine, I don't know what her drink is, or maybe if she drinks, but she'll probably want to head out and maybe grab a few margaritas on the beach, a well-deserved time off, and then we'll see if we can get her in studio after that.
I mean, anyone who's been politicking that long, I mean, our chat was saying it. She deserves a rest. She deserves a much needed downtime into retirement. And she was one of the greatest, NDPers, I think, ever. So,
certainly one of the most successful ones.
That's what I mean. And just, very intelligent and, had her time here when people thought, hey, there's no way the NDP is going to rule. And they did under her tenure. It was great. But there comes a time when, man, she needs a break. And I think politicians, I wonder what it feels like, Ryan, that first day when you know what I mean? You know, the emails stop coming. I'm sure the emails keep coming, but the official ones stop coming, and you get to finally relax. And maybe, especially here, the cars parked outside your house finally leave. And you know what I'm talking about.
Well, I would say this is you can finally say what you really think to some people that need to hear it. Yeah. Right? Like you as a politician, I'm not saying you stop keeping it classy, but it's a different lifestyle. And oftentimes, it's kind of funny. Sometimes, people will say, like, you got to get this politician on, get this minister on the show. You got to get this political leader on the show. You got to get this elected representative on the show. And sometimes, you guys know, they're the worst interviews. Not always, but sometimes. Like I remember, we've joked a little bit. I don't keep bringing this up. I mean, at some point we got to let this die. But like, Jason Kenney, like back in the day when I was on the terrestrial radio station, and Kenney refused to do an interview with me, and then he forbade his cabinet ministers and his MLAs to do interviews with me, and everybody thought, well, what's Jesperson going to do now that none of the Conservatives will do interviews with him? And I said, absolutely nothing, except to continue to have the top-rated talk show in the province, because nobody gives a fuck about those kinds of interviews. Now, obviously, you want to hear politicians on the record, and you want to hear their perspectives, but the best interviews are the politicians that are retired, that have stepped away, or sometimes lost an election, and they're licking their wounds, and they're reflecting, and they're being honest and open and raw. Those are the interviews that we want.
100%.
Rachel Notley, obviously going out on her own terms. In a way, she lost the election, barely, would have loved to win it, wasn't what the cards held, and she's made way for a Naheed Nenshi-led NDP, and now it's his party, and we'll see what he does as leader of the official opposition. He's actually not that yet. He's leader of the Alberta NDP, but he'll be the leader of the official opposition when he wins a seat. I don't see him running in the by-election in Edmonton, Strathcona, where Notley's vacating, and it'll be interesting to see who steps up there. But of course, it's now Naheed Nenshi's party, which is of course a bit of a different situation.
That's a great. I just got an image of him kind of, it's my party. But like you're just talking about, I think those interviews that are boring are because, like we've seen with Harper here, like those people that resign and then their interviews are boring, you think that they're pining for another position somewhere. So they're keeping tight-lipped, right? Yeah. And who knows, maybe Rachel Notley, I'm sure she could be doing something. or commenting on something and have a job afterwards, because, you know, a lot of people appreciate her opinion. I mean, I'd love to have her on the show every week after she resigns, just to hear her thoughts.
Every week?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
No, you know, every month.
Yeah, maybe not. We'll see. You know what we could do would be awesome is every month you get like a 2-person panel of two retired premiers, and you get Notley and a conservative. It would be like our version. It would be the Discourse 2.0. You'd have the NDP and you'd have the Conservatives, and they could kick the ball back and forth. I see Adam C. in our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, and he says Premier Notley famously loved her Edmonton craft beer, and I happen to know an Adam C. who owns Analog Brewing in Edmonton, and I wonder if that's the same fella, and if it is, I think Analog deserves a shout out this morning for live tuning Real Talk and for contributing to our conversation. I'm pretty sure, Adam, correct me if I'm wrong, I hope I don't blow it, I hope I don't screw it up, but this is my Christmas gift to you. Don't you guys have something right now going on, your Christmas advent calendar, something like that? You got a beer advent calendar or something? Pop it into the chat, Adam, while you have our full attention, and everybody make sure you support your local craft brewers this Christmas, including our good friends at Analog Brewing. Adam, you now owe me $1,000.
Not too late. I just want to remind everyone before, I know Canada Post is hectic right now, but
we have a plan.
Real Talk merch. We've seen a holiday boom here. So things are running out on the website. If you want to grab a stocking stuffer, something last minute, even if it comes after Christmas,
it won't.
It won't.
No, we have a plan. We've already discussed this.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We've discussed it with the general manager of our company, with Katie.
Katie, we love you.
Real Talk, we've decided that we want to make sure that Real Talk merch is in the stockings and under the trees
December
of Real
25th.
Talkers. And so we're going to step up, and we don't make a lot on our merch. That's not the point. We want to make sure that Real Talkers have it. And so we're going to make sure we're going to use other delivery services. If you do place a merch order within the next few days, we got to cut it off, obviously, to guarantee delivery. But we're going to make sure that the courier services and other delivery options available. That's Katie's wheelhouse, not mine. Ensure that your Real Talk merch reaches its destination before Christmas. You got to place your order within the next couple of days. You can visit ryanjesperson.com/merch. You and I know this for a fact, as of, what was it, a couple of days ago, so they might be at 0 now, but our Real Talk studio coffee mugs,
like
the
left.
ones that I use, we got the alert when it was at 5 left in our inventory. So if you want to put an official Real Talk studio mug under the tree of the Real Talker in your life, or maybe you're just buying something nice for yourself. Do you buy yourself Christmas gifts every once in a while? You sort of you don't maybe wrap it up and put it under the tree, but if you're out and about, do you maybe treat yourself to a little something?
I mean, there's those 3 sales. You get the Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and then Boxing Day. I always take one of those days. This year, I didn't buy anything on the first 2, so I probably, on Boxing Day, I'm like, okay, everything's done, stress, everything's opened, all the wrapping paper's been recycled. I'm going to get myself something.
You couldn't pay me enough to leave the house on Boxing Day. I look at the line.
Online.
Okay, online. No, but not like some people are out like Boxing Day
they
morning,
line up
8 a.m. I'm just like, who are these people?
Katie just emailed me. She said I'll be hand delivering all the Real Talk.
Is Katie watching right now?
Yeah.
Shout out to Katie. Shout out to Katie. I know. I also wanted to touch on one other thing. Greg, I saw you in the live chat. Greg says, well, where was the first Friesen Brothers butcher shop, Greg? In 1955. It opened in Hinton, Alberta. Shout out to beautiful Hinton, Alberta, the gateway to Jasper National Park. That's where Friesen Brothers was born, established in 1955. Friends, we're grateful to have you join us on this episode. We appreciate your participation in the live chat or by leaving comments on the YouTube episode. You can also hit us up on every social media platform. Well, at least most of them. We're still making up our minds around Blue Sky. We said no to Mastodon, but we could be convinced. Don't miss our next episode on Friday the 13th. We're going to welcome 3 familiar faces, all of them featured in Edify's Top 40 Under 40. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll talk to you then.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Grande Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harmon Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.